Hi, everyone. This is Benny Blunt. Welcome to Vietnam Vet Radio. In a few moments, we're going to play a recent interview that I had with Carrie McFadden, an Australian citizen married to an American Vietnam veteran. In the interview, we discussed Carrie's book, Our Forgotten Soldiers. The book is an international bestseller that tells the stories of Vietnam veterans with PTSD and how they and their families struggle with this issue. June is PTSD Awareness Month, and it's Carrie's intention to bring PTSD out of the closet by being a loud voice for Vietnam veterans who struggle with PTSD. Here is the interview. We have with us by phone Carrie McFadden, an Australian citizen married to an American Vietnam veteran. They make their home in Utah, here in the United States. Now, Carrie is the author of the international bestseller, Our Forgotten Soldiers, which will launch, by the way, on Amazon August the 15th of this year. Carrie is with us to tell us about her book. Carrie, welcome to Vietnam Vet Radio.
Thank you very much, Bernie. It's great to be here.
Carrie, the title of your book, Our Forgotten Soldiers, readily suggests, at least to me, that something is amiss in society's relationship with or understanding of the military, that society is either ignorant of or purposely ignoring something that you want to correct. What is that?
Okay, well, I have noticed over the last few years, being married to a Vietnam veteran, how our Vietnam veterans have been treated both in the past and now. For some reason, we aren't the in thing, the old news, and I think it's got a lot to do with our boys going to Vietnam and people seeing them as doing the wrong things. When they came back home again, they were spat upon, they were called baby killer, and they were treated terribly. Even to try and go and find a job, they had trouble doing that. These days, people still don't understand what our Vietnam veterans have gone through with their post-traumatic stress and their Agent Orange. And I want to get the word out there. Please walk in our veterans' shoes even for 2 days and understand things they are going through. And that's the message I'm trying to get out there. Our Vietnam veterans.
In your book, you have a lot of personal stories from Vietnam veterans. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Can you kind of give us just a real brief example of one of the stories and how you got the story, how you acquired that story?
Okay. Well, let me tell you a story about from this guy. He sent it to me. He was a sniper in Vietnam. Now, he was telling me that of the night time they would often hear a baby crying. And then as soon as the crying died down, the baby would start to scream. And this went on for most of the night. Well, the following night, on the following day, the men went to where this baby was to find that the baby had been tortured to try and draw the Americans out. And that's his nightmares. Every night he hears it in his dreams, and he sees it in his dreams. Now, in order for me to get these stories, I have to go into the Vietnam veteran sites on Facebook. I'd write to organizations. I asked friends if they could refer me to people. And at first it was really hard to get these men's stories. But once they found out what I was trying to do with my book, they then agreed to share their stories with me. But some of the stories are so heartbreaking that when I was writing them for the book, I had tears falling down my cheeks because of what they had to go through.
I suppose you didn't just sit down one day and decide, well, I'm going to write an important book.
How it came about was I went with my husband to the VA hospital. He had to get assessed for post-traumatic stress. Now we go into this small room, and this psychologist starts to ask him questions. And I was watching his face because I was concerned about these questions. His face went from anger to rage to fear to terror to sadness because he was trying to respond to these questions on things that he'd been trying to forget for over 40 years. And while he was answering these questions, he had these tears just falling down his cheeks. So I went over and I hugged him and told him that I was there for him and that it was okay. And then I went and sat back down again And I thought to myself, he is one of our forgotten soldiers, and I'm going to go home and I'm going to write about this. And that's how the book came about.
Have you learned a lot about PTSD since you've started this work?
Oh yes, so much. I've learned what to look for, how it can cause depression and paranoia. It can make the men overprotective to their partners. It can cause sudden rage. It can cause fear. I mean, I've seen my husband and another veteran going out for breakfast, and they always face the door, and they're always scanning the restaurant just to see who's coming through the door. I've seen them become explosive volcanoes in the blink of an eye, and then I've seen him come back down again and not even remember what he said.
In your book, you talk about a little bit about the history of what we call today post-traumatic stress. It wasn't always called that, was it?
It was called many names, and unfortunately back in the First World War, people from Britain were shot for being traitors. People from America were shot. And it wasn't their fault that the military didn't understand that when a man or a woman reaches the end of their endurance, post-traumatic stress comes about. And they didn't realize that. So during the Second World War, they started to learn that the men weren't cowards. They had just reached the end of their endurance. But then by the time the Korean War came around, that was still in effect. But when Vietnam rolled around, it had fallen far behind again. So when you guys came back from Vietnam, you were suffering from post-traumatic stress, but nobody spoke about it because nobody knew about it. So they did the best they could do by drinking and taking drugs, becoming homeless. So post-traumatic stress is a major factor in a lot of problems with people, especially if they've been through a traumatic incident.
What do you want this book to accomplish? What are you trying to say through this book?
I would like it to be used to educate people on what to look for with post-traumatic stress. I would like it to be used in colleges for medical professionals so they can actually understand why their patient is the way they are. I want it to be used by high school students so they can learn about the history of Vietnam and what happened over there. I'd also like it to be used by colleges teaching psych students, because I have found that a lot of medical doctors don't know anything about post-traumatic stress. Now, I don't pretend to be a medical professional. I don't pretend to be a counsellor or psychologist or a psychiatrist. What I am is the wife of a veteran with post-traumatic stress who has learned what to look for and how to deal with it. And that's what I want this book to do, to educate people on what to look for and how to help the veteran.
Let me ask you another question. Talking about getting this out and into the different venues, why do you suppose it is that there's not more research, there's not more that's known about PTSD, why there's not more emphasis on treating PTSD?
I think it's because for a lot of years people wanted to hide it under the carpet. It's only starting to come out now because of that movie, American Sniper.
American Sniper, yes.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of people understood what to look for. I mean, we have psychologists and psychiatrists who try and understand, but I find that when they talk to people who do have post-traumatic stress, they use big words that a lot of people don't understand. And I think one of the reasons why it's not out there more is because people don't want to admit that there's a problem here. They want to push it under a carpet somewhere. Nobody cares except for the immediate family and their doctors, because the veteran's not a movie star. The veteran is not well known. Nobody wants their autograph, but they are one of the most important members of society. And when they have a problem with post-traumatic stress, people don't want to admit that they've got a problem. So they try and push it under the carpet instead of trying to find solutions and help people.
Is it, in your experience, is it the veteran himself or herself that doesn't want to admit it, or is it family members or friends or others around the veteran who don't want to admit it, or a combination of both?
I think it's a combination of both, because my husband told me, because I never knew for the first few years of our marriage that he had post-traumatic stress. And I asked him one night, why didn't you tell me? And he said, because I was ashamed. I was ashamed that I had this problem and I didn't want you to know about it. So maybe there's a lot of that going, that shame. Maybe it's the family members trying to keep it a secret from everybody else because they're ashamed of it. Instead of trying to get the person help, they try and help them themselves. And I think that could be most of the problem. And a lot of veterans also refuse to believe they have a problem too, because they want to appear as strong.
Right. Exactly right. And one other question I need to ask you is how effective, at least in your knowledge, is the Veterans Administration in treating PTSD, in recognizing and treating PTSD? Are they coming along?
I think it took them a long time to recognize that post-traumatic stress was around. I remember writing an article once for my Facebook page, and I said maybe if they had recognized the symptoms earlier for our Vietnam veterans, then maybe there wouldn't be the problem that there is now. They're trying their best now. They use acupuncture, they use meditation, group therapy, and they still use medication. And I think they are trying to help, but I think it's still in the learning stages, and I think it's going to take a while before they can actually see results.
In your book, you have stories of many people who suffer from these issues, and so it's not just one single person. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, yeah.
Okay.
I wanted to try and get the perspective of different people in the book and types of things they faced. And I found that the biggest thing about this book was that their problems were similar, but they all dealt with it in different ways. There's a part that I wrote about this young fellow that was in the same unit as my husband. He was an alcoholic, and he used to go into a little town and tuck one of his legs up under his body to beg for money for his drinking. Now, he ended up getting kicked out of the military because of his drinking problem, and then he committed suicide because he didn't know what was wrong with him. He didn't know why he had these demons. So each veteran deals with things in a different way.
Carrie, what are your future plans as far as your writing goes?
My next book that I'm hoping to write is going to be called Tears from the Soul. It's about the families of veterans who have post-traumatic stress, and I want to get their perspective on things as well. And I also write romance books. I mean, what woman doesn't like romance?
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, Carrie, thank you for taking the time to join us here on Vietnam Vet Radio and telling us about our forgotten soldiers and addressing PTSD and an issue that a great many veterans and family members are dealing with at this very moment. Tell us, how can we find out more about you, about your work, and about your book, Our Forgotten Soldiers, and your other books?
Okay, well, I've got a website, as you know, and I've also got a Facebook page called Our Forgotten Soldiers, and it's got different things listed on there. Or people can actually contact me on Facebook to ask them any questions they want to, find out information about things. If they want to know what books I've got coming up, I'll be gladly able to tell them that. Or they can check out the website.
And the website, once again, is?
www.klmcfadden.com.
klmcfadden.com. All one word and lower cases.
All lowercase, yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Carrie, and God bless you for your work. Remember now, you can find out more about Carrie and their books and her work at klmcfadden.com. That's KLMCFADDEN, klmcfadden.com. You can also contact us here at Vietnam Vet Radio, and we will get you in touch with Carrie. Once again, Carrie, thank you so very much for what you're doing. You are making a difference among our Vietnam veterans, and I trust that your work is going to expand as people become more aware of PTSD, and your book and your work is certainly bringing that to the forefront. Thank you again.
Can I just mention one other thing, if you don't mind?
Yes, ma'am, please.
My ultimate goal is to be a spokesman a spokesperson for our Vietnam veterans. I want to be out there and put it in people's faces that you guys are still around.
Amen.
So, typical woman, you know, always want to get out there and do stuff. So that's my ultimate goal, is to be a spokesperson for our Vietnam veterans.
You've got an excellent start. As Vietnam veterans, we're coming out of the closet. We are here to let the world know that Vietnam veterans are alive and well, and people like you are here to let the world know that there is someone who cares about Vietnam veterans and the issues that they have faced and are facing today. Thanks, Carrie, so much.
Thank you, and bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening, and please go to Carrie's website, www.klmcfadden.com, or visit her on her Facebook page and express your comments about her work. Thanks again.